Hi, my name is Mike Mills, and I'm the co-founder and managing partner of the Legacy Advisor Group. Today is Monday, July 6, 2026, right before the market opens. Happy 250th birthday, USA. In this month's Market Minute, I'll give a review of the first half of 2026 and then talk a little bit about our past 250 years from a financial perspective and why we remain optimistic for the next 250. At first glance, the first half of 2026 looked fairly uneventful. Despite ongoing geopolitical tensions in the Middle East, rising energy prices, and continued pressure from higher interest rates, the major stock market indices showed impressive resilience. The NASDAQ Composite led the way, gaining just over 12.5%, while the S&P 500 returned just over 9.5%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 8.9%, marking its strongest first-half performance since 2021. What made this period particularly interesting was the broadening of market leadership. For several years, and you've heard us talk about this, a handful of large technology companies drove most of the market gains. In the first half of 2026, that trend began to change. The S&P 500 equal weighted index advanced 12.1%, and the Russell 2000 index of small cap companies surged nearly 22%, its strongest start to a year since 1991. This suggests investors were finding opportunities well beyond the market's largest names. In fact, the so-called Mag 7, which had dominated performance in recent years, collectively declined about 2.5% during the first 6 months of the year. Investors became increasingly focused on whether massive investments in artificial intelligence infrastructure would eventually generate the profits many had anticipated. At the same time, concerns emerged that AI-driven automation would disrupt traditional software business models, creating pressure on valuations across parts of the technology sector. As money moved away from some of the mega-cap technology names, investors rotated into sectors tied more directly to physical economy. Industrials led all sectors with a gain of more than 20%, benefiting from domestic manufacturing growth and reshoring trends. Technology remained one of the strongest sectors overall, but leadership shifted away from software and toward hardware and semiconductor companies, supporting the AI build-out. Energy stocks also posted strong gains as geopolitical tensions and supply disruptions helped push oil prices higher. Materials and real estate delivered solid returns as well. Meanwhile, traditionally defensive sectors such as healthcare and communication services posted only modest gains, while consumer discretionary and financial stocks ended the period slightly lower. The result was a market that became much more broadly diversified, something you've heard us talk a lot about, with performance driven by a wider range of industries rather than a small handful of companies. The key takeaway from the first half of 2026 is that the economy and markets demonstrated considerable strength, even as leadership shifted beneath the surface. The AI story remains very much alive, but it appears to be evolving from a narrow technology trade into a much broader investment theme involving infrastructure, manufacturing, energy, and hardware. For investors, this broader participation is a healthy sign and serves as a reminder that opportunities often emerge when market leadership expands beyond the most popular names. Now, no one knows what the second half of 2026 holds. We wouldn't be surprised if we see a larger pullback in the markets, or if the market continues to grind higher. Moving from the last 6 months to the last 250 years, though, is where we see a lot of change and a lot of progression. Over the past 250 years, investors have lived through no shortage of reasons to give up on America and the markets. But our founders did not take extraordinary risks for us to have a give-up attitude then or today. There have been plenty of reasons to throw in the towel. There was the Panic of 1837 when banks failed and a major recession swept across the country. There was the Civil War when the future of the nation itself was uncertain. The Panic of 1907 created a banking crisis so severe that it eventually led to the creation of the Federal Reserve System. Investors then endured the Great Depression after the stock market crashed in 1929. Many thought capitalism itself might not survive. Yet from those difficult years, America rebuilt and emerged as the world's leading economic power. The headlines continued: World War II, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the assassinations of the 1960s, double-digit inflation and energy shortages in the 1970s. Black Monday in October 1987 when the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell more than 22% in a single day. Imagine that happening today. The bursting of the dot-com bubble in 2000, the financial crisis of 2008, and the COVID pandemic of 2020. If you were invested during any of those periods, the news would have given you plenty of reasons to sell. And if we stop right there, that would be only half the story. only the countless reasons to give up, throw in the towel, and lose hope. Folks, there is plenty of negativity out there that would suggest that it is exactly what to do at any given time in history is to throw in the towel. Yet history reminds us that markets reward patience far more often than it rewards prediction or timing. I read a lot, and recently I read a piece by David Bodson. David's an investment manager I read regularly, and he recently reminded us, readers, of an address that Abraham Lincoln gave in December of 1862, where he described America, as our last best hope. His message was simple: markets are ultimately about people. They're driven by optimism, entrepreneurship, and the willingness to take risk in pursuit of a better future. While headlines often focus on what's going wrong, long-term economic growth comes from individuals creating businesses, solving problems, and meeting the needs of others. In the end, the economy is not just about numbers, it's about people and human ingenuity. John Hillen wrote in the Wall Street Journal on July 3, 2026, "In the past 250 years, a nation once so fragile that it might have been strangled in its cradle has risen above all of its major competitors and established itself as the world's preeminent power. How a republic not built around martial genius or government planning did that is the central question of American strategy. The answer is the spirit of enterprise, free markets, and free people. Since America's earliest securities traded in the 1790s with 24 individuals gathered under a Brentwood tree in Philadelphia, investors have faced recessions, wars, political divisions, financial panics, and market crashes. Yet over that same period, the United States transformed from a young nation of fewer than 4 million people into the world's largest economy in over 330 million people. The companies have changed. The technology has changed. The markets have changed. But one thing has remained remarkably consistent: human ingenuity and the ability of people to create value through innovation, hard work, and enterprise. So as we celebrate America's 250th birthday, it's worth remembering that the market's history is really a story about people. Farmers, inventors, factory workers, entrepreneurs, business owners, engineers, and countless others who built companies, created jobs, solved problems, and improved our standard of living. For 250 years, investors have been given reasons to fear the future. And for 250 years, America has continued to move forward. That's not a prediction about what will happen next week, next month, or even next year. It's simply an observation from history. Optimism, patience, and disciplined investing have generally been rewarded over time. And that's a lesson worth remembering as we begin America's next 250 years. To leave you with one more quote, Ronald Reagan, in his first inaugural address, named the secret of American power: "We are a nation that has a government, not the other way around. And this makes us special among the nations of the earth." On the Republic's 250th birthday, that's worth celebrating and remembering. We are a blessed country. May we never take that for granted. On behalf of the Legacy Advisor Group, thank you for your friendship and for your trust. We hope you and your loved ones have a wonderful summer, and here's to the next 250 years.